Welcome to TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we are going to dive into our Reverb integration for our music store customers, really focusing on the setup, basically the things that you want to consider as far as optional setup, the processing of orders, and of course the sending of these products up to Reverb. We're going to dive into a lot of material today, so we're going to jump right into it as soon as we cover our normal, I guess you could say, house rules. So first and foremost, welcome if you are attending this live. And second of all, if you want, you can click on the chat tab over to the right, where there is an option to sign in at the bottom with the nickname button. That will let you put in your name, and then from there you can say hi and let me know that you're here. And if you have any questions about the Reverb integration throughout the course of today's broadcast, feel free to go ahead and type those in the chat, and I will be monitoring that over on my monitor over here, and I will do my best to answer those as I see those come in. So, like always, let's go ahead and jump into my copy of local AIM system here. So, when it comes to anything regarding Active E, you're pretty much always going to want to go to the Active E menu here under Maintenance, down to the Active E Setup option down here by my chin, where if we scroll down, we will find a Reverb option. And I've taken the liberty to kind of preset a lot of these details here. So first and foremost, you'll want to make sure that you already have an account with Reverb, all set up and ready to go. On the Reverb profile page, there will be an option for, I believe it's called API integration or something similar to that, where you can generate what's known as a token. It'll ask you what sorts of endpoints you want to have all turned on. We recommend turning all of them on, generating that token, and then copying and pasting it here into the Reverb token section. From here, I'm not going to touch on all of these fields, but just kind of the most pressing ones here. First and foremost, the currency type. If you are in the United States, go ahead and put in USD here. If you are Canadian, you want to put in CAD. Those are the initials for the US dollar versus the Canadian dollar. These next couple of fields here relating to attributes. These are attributes that Reverb tracks for the purposes of helping to define search parameters for finish and year. If you have appropriate attributes in AIM for those, feel free to select them. I have a finish attribute. I do not have a year attribute, so I'm leaving that blank. In the shipping category, you'll want to select whatever shipping category you have non-inventory related for the purposes of tracking any shipping revenue that you are collecting and charging. In most cases, this is simply going to be named shipping. Others may have it known as freight and handling or something similar, but just make sure you go ahead and make that selection. The shipping ID, these will be details that come from your Reverb account. So when you first put in your Reverb token, these may not show up after you save and kind of let the system connect together and then come back in here. Whatever shipping kind of templates you have set up on Reverb will show up here. And basically the whole idea here is this can be whatever you want to pick that can be the default shipping ID for the majority of your sales. You don't have to pick one, but if you do, you do not have to select one then when it comes time to actually push these products up. I'm going to go ahead and choose the free shipping option here just because I didn't get that picked from before. The next two fields here for customer defaults. If you're not familiar with customer defaults, these are basically the customer types or the categories in which your customers will be landed and tracked and organized. And in most cases, these are going to be the same for non-tax versus tax. When it comes to sales tax, Reverb actually does, on your behalf, collect and assess and go ahead and pay out, essentially, local sales tax for all 50 states. So I usually would recommend going ahead and just setting these both up the same. If you have special arrangements to actually keep track of all that, you certainly can. The shopping cart price, this is the default price that will list for your Reverb items, and we recommend going ahead and choosing the hour price, but of course you can pick whatever you want. If you have more than one location, you'll want to pick the location to use for pricing. If you have the one location, by all means go ahead and select it. The option here for the ability to auto invoice or auto order all Reverb orders. AIM does have a function if you are doing a lot of Reverb e-commerce activity to essentially just automatically invoice all of these products, and then you can go back later on, get a printout of all of the transactions for the purposes of getting these shipped out and fulfilled. If you have this checkmarked, you'll get the option to do so. You always can just do them on a one-by-one basis. And of course, if you are doing auto ordering, this will ignore the quantity available and on order and basically just put it through on an order for that item. And then the publish price, cost, and quantity updates only. Basically, if this is checkmarked, any existing Reverb listings will have updates. Otherwise, it will basically ignore everything else. If you have more than one location and you want to choose specific locations for tracking quantities, you can put in their location codes here. If you leave it blank, it'll use all of your location quantities. And probably the most important function as far as Reverb is concerned for these listings is this has inventory default. Now, by check marking this implies that most of the listings that you are going to be doing on Reverb are products that are going to be replenishable. In other words, they are products that you can get new and on order from a vendor, and you can get more than one of them going forward. If you intend to list primarily used and vintage and consignment items, I would not recommend checkmarking this. This is something that you can turn on and off on an individual listing basis. For the purposes of Reverb's ability to show you your margins, you can pull in one of three cost points. You can pull in cost, weighted cost, or the normal vendor cost. So whatever you prefer there. And then the sandbox mode, I have this check mark. More than likely you will not unless you are connecting this to a Reverb account that is specifically set up as sandbox mode, so that even though these items are quote-unquote published, they will not be out there live for customers to browse and potentially try and purchase. They'll go to a sandbox.reverb.com as opposed to the actual reverb.com. There are multiple tabs up here. Let's take a quick look at setup for tab 2. When we are talking about processing orders versus invoices, if you would like to process those in that fashion, you can have a default to one of three choices. You can have it save the order and basically consider it done and ready to go for purchase ordering and have it not open the change orders for the purposes of reviewing. Or you can save the order and have it open up in change orders for the purposes of reviewing. Or if you would rather it not save the order and you want to process it manually, then choose the third option of do not save order and open the enter orders program. Right below that, the back out tax option. I recommend check marking this so that you do not have AIM trying to calculate tax when these invoices are pulled in. Again, Reverb is going to take care of that for you. If the majority of your sales are out of state, then I recommend having this check marked. If you are doing a lot of sales in state, you may not want it to back out the tax because Reverb, if I remember correctly, does not handle sales tax for your local states. So again, these are things that you can do on a case-by-case basis, but we recommend having it checkmarked for the majority of your sales, again, assuming that they are going out of state. The last thing I really kind of want to talk about on this tab is the optional setup of payment categories and Reverb fee categories. So basically, by setting up specific pay cats for this function, when you pull an order in from Reverb, of course, Reverb charges their own fees, and if you want to basically have AIM automatically assess those for you, you can set up two payment categories in your ledger setup, one for the payment, which is basically what you actually receive from the transaction, and one for the fees. And then basically by having this set up here, let's say you have a $100 sale, and Reverb assesses a $20 fee on that. This would then assume that $80 is automatically going to be pushed into the Reverb payment, which you can then mark as deposited into your checking or however you want to do it at the end of the day. And then the $20 in Reverb fees will go to the appropriate ledger account that you have for wherever in your expenses. If you prefer to, instead of just having those all lumped together, break them out, you can set up ledger accounts and payment categories for all of the different fees that Reverb levies for processing, all the way down to tax lines. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not going to dive into a lot of that. And last but not least, on the extras tab here, if you already have an active Reverb listing or listings and you would prefer to try and find those and match them up right now, you can click this button, which will go ahead and pull up this link Reverb items form, where you can then click the download Reverb listings. It will find all of the listings that you have live on Reverb, and it will try and find any potential matches by SKU. If they do find any matches, they will be listed in green and automatically checkmarked here. And if you do not find any, or if it does not find any matches, it will list them in red here. So basically, it's just a quick way to match those up. And if you want, you can click the view listing here. I'm not going to get into that because of time limitations. So that is the premier setup for connecting AIM to Reverb. Now, to make your life easier for this process, there are some things that you can optionally set up just to make, again, life easier and have a quality of life scenario. So let's talk quickly about those ledger accounts for the purposes of the breakouts. If we go to the ledger payment categories here in maintenance and take a quick peek here, we will see I have set up two accounts here, one called Reverb Payment. These will be both set up as regular payments, and basically you'll just want to make sure this exists. Ideally, you'll have this going to some kind of clearing account at the end of the day. In this case, I've got it going to a 10921 that I created, calling itself Reverb Payment. And then also the Reverb fees, I've got this one set up in exactly the same way, except it's going to an expense account in my ledger, 631-1. Again, I have created both of these custom. You more than likely will have to as well if you want to use this functionality. Your CPA or bookkeeper can give the best recommendations for how you need to have your ledger set up if you decide to use this function. Let's also talk a little bit about categories. So of course in AIM you have your own inventory categories and subcategories. This is how you organize your inventory. It's how you search for your inventory. It's how you report on your inventory. It's how AIM controls whether things are taxable or not. Reverb also has their own categories for the purposes of customer ease of shopping and browsing and exploring. And what we want to try and do is make this as seamless of a connection as possible when we go to list products on Reverb. So what you can do after you've made this connection, you can go into maintenance, inventory, and maintain subcategories. And on a case-by-case basis for any of these categories, let's say, for example, I go ahead and click on my first one here for flutes. We can go over here to the 7th tab for integrations, where there is going to be a Reverb category dropdown, which will display all of the categories that Reverb has for you to be able to essentially connect any flute listings to the appropriate listing on Reverb. Now, what you may find handy, just because this is a massive list and sometimes it's not very easy to just kind of scroll down and find the appropriate one, you can press F6 and then this will bring up that same list but in a more searchable function. So I'll just go ahead and type in flute and there we go. They have exactly one category that is appropriate for flutes, which they call band and orchestra category, with the subcategory of woodwind flutes. I'll go ahead and select that. And when I save that, anytime I go to make a listing from my flute category here, by default it will choose this band and orchestra flutes category on Reverb. There may not be appropriate choices in some cases. For example, if we go down to guitars here, I've gone ahead and selected dreadnoughts here for the purposes of my demonstration here, but you might notice that they have a number of different acoustic guitar categories. And it's not just the case where you can select acoustic guitars. Reverb is not going to allow that. They're going to want you to pick the deepest category that you can go when you go to make these listings. Now, for me, I don't do a lot of these listings because obviously that's not my line of work. I'm just here to tell you how to work it. But what you may want to do is go ahead and pick, in the case of, like, for example, in this case, an acoustic guitar category, pick the acoustic guitars one. Just be cognizant that when it comes time to list any acoustic guitars that you go to push to reverb, you will need to make sure that you pick an appropriate deep level subcategory. They have things ranging from 12 string and archtop and baritone, classical, dreadnought, jumbo, left-handed, etc., etc. Of course, there's going to be some crossover in there. Me being a lefty, I would like to search by left-handed, but I also might want to search by concert or classical. So there's going to be some give and take there. It just kind of is what it is. So just kind of keep that in mind. So this again is optional, but I definitely recommend taking the time to make these links, because when we get to the step of pushing products up there, you'll find it makes your life a lot easier. Which there's one more optional thing that I'd like to point out before we jump into that, and that's going to be a system variable in your general maintenance. And that system variable is called web order effect available quantity. When it comes time to pull these orders in from Reverb, when they get pulled in, but before you get a chance to actually process them, AIM can, on your behalf, mark those quantities as allocated, so that way, if you have a situation where, let's say you've got 10 of a product in stock, and someone online orders, let's say, 3 of them, you can have AIM basically show that there are only 7 remaining to sell, as opposed to just indicating that no, there are no web orders yet for processing. By marking this as a capital Y in the first field here, this will go ahead and affect those quantities as soon as they get pulled down from Reverb, but before you have a chance to actually go in and process and invoice the transaction. So just kind of keep that in mind. The second field here is just whether or not to attempt to send all of an item's quantity from one location if possible. If you have multiple locations, you may want to leave that on N. If the majority of your transactions are going to be processed from one location, feel free to go ahead and make that be a Y. It's just that way it knows which location to try and allocate them from, is basically the idea there. So let's talk about sending items up to Reverb and listing them. You can do this in one of 2 ways. I'm going to show you both of them, individual and bulk. When we talk about individual, probably the fastest way is going to be going straight to, let's say, display inventory and searching for an item. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of items in my system here, so I'm just going to go ahead and find one that I've kind of prepped ahead of time, this soprano ukulele. I'll go ahead and click the edit button here to pull up the inventory details. And if we take a look here at the second tab, the SKUs tab, down here at the bottom where it already says Reverb, yours is going to say Active E Connections. You're going to want to choose Reverb and then click the Go button. This is going to bring up the Reverb Items Setup window. And from here, you can control all of the details about this item's listing on Reverb. Starting with basic details such as the listing title, here's the category that it's going to try and list in. If you've pre-selected those back at the subcategory setup, it'll already have that filled in. The category 2 field here is basically an alternative. It's not required, but if you would like to list this in a secondary category on Reverb's website, you certainly can select one here. The condition, you're going to want to make sure you pick the appropriate condition. If we're talking about new items, of course, it will be listed as brand new, and by default, anything that is in AIM will default to that. Otherwise, if it is a used or otherwise vintage, consigned, whatever, you didn't get it new, you're going to want to make sure that you pick Reverb's appropriate listing for that, whether it's mint or excellent, all the way down to poor or non-functioning. That's just to satisfy Reverb's side of this whole process. The listing price will come from where you picked the shopping cart price from, so if you want, you can certainly adjust that here. If you want, again, you can adjust the seller cost. I don't have a normal cost for this because I've never ordered one, but if I did, it would show up there. Then the extended description, if you are pulling these from our supplier connections and that is available from the supplier, this will already come in from the web description. Otherwise, this is, of course, all the room in the world to type in what you want to say about the item. And then images. So Of course, you need to have images in order to list on Reverb. Now, unfortunately, the API connection does not allow for you to take an image that you have locally stored on your computer and upload it like you would if you were just going straight to reverb.com and creating the listing there. If you have a large number of your own image listings, I recommend setting up a cloud sharing photo sharing service. That could be something as simple as a Dropbox or an Imgur account or a number of different photo sharing websites that are out there. You certainly could use something like a Google Drive or an iCloud, or basically any place where you can have an image that you can then generate a publicly and easily shareable URL for. If we click the Inventory Images button here, I happen to already have an image at the model level that I'm getting from this CDN Shopify for this exact model. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. So I'll save that, and you can see that this gets pulled in here. And then before I click the save and upload, I want to talk about the checkboxes up here. So again, hopefully most of these are fairly straightforward. The publish option, if this is checkmarked, then it will be immediately listed live. If you do not have that checkmarked, it will be essentially saved as a draft or for review. If it's being sold as is, of course, you'll mark that. If you are allowing any offers on Reverb to be processed, you can check mark that. If it's tax exempt and you don't want it to calculate any sales tax, you can mark that. Here's the has inventory function. So this being a product that I can get new and replenished, I'll have that. I'll leave that as checkmarked. If this were a vintage item or again otherwise used and I can't get replenishment of it, I'll just want to make sure that is not checkmarked. And then of course, well, maybe not of course, but Reverb has a very stringent policy on UPCs and barcodes. So it wants to be able to make sure that you have barcode listings for these. So if for whatever reason you do not have that, or again, it's a vintage item and you can't get one, you want to make sure that the UPC does not apply for those items. Ultimately, we're going to go ahead and click Save, and we're going to click the Upload button, and watch what happens up here in the listing ID when I click Upload. It's going to go ahead and, well, let's say, okay, that SKU already exists because I was testing this earlier. So let's go ahead and find it. And there it's finding the existing listing ID. And of course, do I want to update the AIM fields, which of course they're already the same. But basically, if you didn't have it already on there, it will have generated one. And of course, in this case, it pulled it down. So I'm going to go ahead and click on View on Reverb and bring this over so we can kind of see what this looks like. So if I scroll down here, there's the title of the item, there's the image that I linked it to, and then all of the extra descriptions and product specs and all of that. These are all coming right from within my AIM system. So that's basically the idea with that. And that's how you can send an individual item. Now, in the handful of minutes that we have remaining for my allotted time, let's talk about extrapolating on that and sending items in bulk. So if we go back to the Active E maintenance menu, we can go to this inventory option here by my eyeballs. This will allow you, if I bring this over to the appropriate monitor, to select inventory for the purposes of mass generation to e-commerce or updates. You want to make sure if you have the choice to select Reverb up here. From here, you can then basically fill in the blanks of any selection criteria that you so desire. That could be whether they are accessories or serialized items, whether they are having quantities available or on hand, or they coming from certain categories, subcategories, falling within certain price ranges, etc., etc. If we're talking about specific Reverb filters, if we're wanting to see if they already have a record, you've got the choice here of either has record, both yes or no, already has a listing ID of both yes or no, a Reverb category specifically to a certain category, or whether or not it will be updated. Let's just go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my guitars, and I'll just go ahead and then click the Get Inventory button here, just so we've got some products that are showing up. Won't be a whole lot. In fact, it's just that one soprano. But If there were multiple listings here, basically the whole idea of this screen is right here, this will have a listing of all the SKUs that met your selection criteria. And the right-hand side here is basically just what we saw on an individual basis. So because I've got the soprano listed here, it's got all the details that we already had from the live listing. The whole idea with this screen is that, well, twofold. One, instead of having to find an item, click on it to edit it, go to the SKUs tab, click the Go button on the Active E connections, bring that screen up, make your changes, hit save, upload it, save, and then find the next one and repeat the same process over and over again. You can instead go right down the list, and as you click on a line item, you can make the adjustments and ultimately save all at one time. Another thing you can do as a time saver is you can filter by certain criteria. Say, for example, I wanted to get all the ukuleles. Of course, there's just the only thing there, but I could type that in as a, of course I misspell it, but you can type that in as a filter that will drill down to just those specific items. And then from there, if I make a selection of let's say an alternative category, for example, let's say this accessories amp category. It's not obviously that, but let's say I wanted to apply that to category 2 of all of the rest of the items. I could do so by making that selection and then coming back over here and right-clicking on the line and then saying to apply that category 2 to all checked items. And by doing that, it will go ahead and take that and apply that or copy that to all of the rest of the listings here. And as you might notice, if I keep this right-click menu open, there's pretty much a right-click option for all of these fields here. Checking and unchecking all the items, applying selected updated, publish, sold as is. All of these options here on the right-hand side are available to apply en masse to the rest of the listings. Now you might notice that there is no upload all from here, and what you'll want to do after you make all of these modifications and actually save them is to finalize and push this out to Reverb. You can go to the modules and Active E menu, and I'll duck out of the way so we can see the update reverb option right by my big old 5 head, and then by clicking this update reverb option, that will go ahead, take all of those listings and push them out to Reverb. Now, of course, you don't want to be doing that on a given daily basis, so I'm going to show you in a moment how to automate that. But before I do, let's talk about the end goal, actually having customers place orders on Reverb and pulling them in for processing in AIM. If we go back to that same menu, Modules and Active E, up here at the top is the Import E-commerce Orders function. And by coming into here, of course, I got to pre-select a shipping category in general for that's the system variables. If that message comes up for you, you're going to want to go to the Active E and Active E setup here, go to the e-commerce and API tab, and just make sure that on this 4th tab, the download orders tab, you've got a shipping category selected here as well. Even if you don't ever intend to process e-commerce orders through Vortex or a third-party cart, AIM does require that to be filled in. So let's go back to the Import E-commerce Orders function. I don't have any test orders to do on the Reverb sandbox, I'm afraid, but basically by clicking down here on this Reverb button, it will take all of those orders that come from Reverb and list them out here. Their order number and name and date of the order will all list here that came from Reverb. You can then click on a line to see the other details, the billing and shipping information. You could click this items button to bring up a listing of what it was that the customer purchased, and you can also then see a live listing of how many of those you have available for fulfillment. The main thing here is you would click the lock button, which will then say this is locked by you, and it will prevent anyone from alternative or secondary workstations from processing the same order. All the rest of these buttons will then become available. You can click the Match Customer button to find any potential matches. If this customer has previously been a customer of yours at the store, it will try and find matches by name, address, and phone number. We, because of Reverb stipulations, do not get the email addresses. That is for privacy concerns on their side. So we won't be able to try and match by email. but we'll try and match by everything else. And if it finds any potential matches, you'll be able to review those. And if there is an exact match, go ahead and choose that. You can then update any details that might have changed since the last time they were at your store, such as physical addresses, etc., etc. If you can't find a match, simply then click the Create Customer button, and it will take everything they filled in online and make the account for you without having to redundantly type everything back in. From there, you can click the Invoice button. If you're going to go ahead and invoice it, everything that they pulled in and ordered online will come directly into a sales invoice. And if you have marked those payment categories for Reverb payment and Reverb fees, it'll already have those assessed. Essentially, all you have to do is click the Finalize button and get the order packed and shipped out and ready to go. And that's basically it. Now, automating this so that you don't have to be on a daily basis coming in multiple times a day and going to update Reverb, importing those orders, clicking the Reverb button. You'll still need to come here to actually process them. But you can set up what's known as a task. I have done numerous broadcasts on this already and talked kind of quite a bit on this, so you can definitely check out those recordings back on the video tab and I believe the admin playlist if you need more details. But there are two actions that you can automate via task. One is importing the Reverb orders so that they will already be there when you go to the import e-commerce function, and the update Active Reverb option so that on a day-to-day basis, as quantities change, as you go in and list items for processing and uploading to Reverb, you can set this task up for as often as, let's say, every 15 minutes, so that just throughout the day constantly orders are getting downloaded and changes of quantities and such are going out to Reverb. So hopefully this has been helpful. For those of you who maybe do dual duty in both a music store and a firearms store. Probably not too many of you. It's kind of a Venn diagram that's very small, but I'm going to be doing an ammo ready broadcast 2 weeks from now on the fourth Tuesday of the month, which is basically Reverb but for firearm stores. So definitely check that out if you have an interest for that. It will be very, very similar, but of course Ammo Ready has some unique functions for that. That being said, I'm still open for suggestions for any and all of these topics for these TriTech University live streams. So up at the top right, you will see a poll option. Anytime you want to make a submission for ideas for broadcast topics, definitely click into there and you'll see an option there to leave your suggestions. Of course, you can also just call those in to our support and sales lines. You can email them directly to me at training@tritechretail.com. Anything that we can do to help you make the most of your AIM solution that we work so hard to make work for you. So thank you so much for all of your attention today. Hopefully this has been helpful, and we might see you in 2 weeks. Until then, I hope you can make it a great day and have a great one.